Denmark has banned 6 people it calls, quote, hate preachers. Denmark banned 5 Islamic clerics and 1 evangelical pastor on May 2nd from the United States, Canada, Saudi Arabia, and Syria. Danish Immigration and Integration Minister Inger Støjberg said, quote, the government will not accept that hate preachers come to Denmark to preach hatred against Danish society. Denmark passed legislation last year allowing the country to ban foreign religious figures who are believed to be a, quote, threat to public order. The banned evangelical pastor is Terry Jones, who has made headlines before for publicly burning copies of the Quran. The Immigration and Integration Ministry said in a statement the people being banned are, quote, traveling rabid religious preachers who try to undermine our democracy and fundamental values of freedom and human rights. The ban will last for 2 years. For United News International, I'm Neela Uni.
In Arkansas on Tuesday, a mandatory evacuation was ordered for the town of Pocahontas after a levee breach caused widespread flooding. According to the National Weather Service, pervasive flooding continues to plague parts of the Midwest and South. While the region works to recover from flood damage following days of storms, another downpour in the forecast threatens to make conditions even worse. Weather-related incidents have already killed at least 17 people in parts of the Midwest and South since the weekend, but the majority of the flood damage has occurred in Arkansas and Missouri, where dangerous conditions have persisted.
World Basketball's governing body updates its rules to allow religious headgear on the court. The move may have been years in the making, but ratification was a slam dunk. The Federation of International Basketball Associations, known as FIBA, says the May 4th decision was unanimous. Players will be allowed to wear headgear starting in October, but the new rule comes with a few conditions. First, the headgear must be black, white, or the same color as the uniform. It's not allowed to cover the eyes, nose, or lips, and it can't pose a danger to anybody on the court. In a statement, FIBA recognized that its previous rule was incompatible with some countries' traditional dress codes. Qatar's women's basketball team even pulled out of the 2014 Asian Games after its players were told they couldn't wear hijabs. Online petitions urging FIBA action have also collected thousands of signatures with the help of the hashtag FIBAAllowHijab. For United News International, I'm Matt Paul.
All the options are on the table.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson will be urging enforcement of economic sanctions against North Korea over its nuclear and missile programs. The pleas will come as Tillerson holds a working lunch with foreign ministers of the 10-nation Southeast Asia bloc. The region's top diplomats will likely be more focused on the Trump administration's trade policy, its dealing with China, and what it means for U.S. policy towards the South China Sea. Several members of the bloc have territorial disputes with Beijing in that area.
A Missouri dairy farmer discovered 32 of his cows were struck by lightning. Jared Blackwelder found the dead herd on April 29th. They were near trees on his Springfield farm. Recent storms in the Midwest caused lightning. The cows are most likely grouping under trees to protect themselves prior to getting struck. Due to Missouri's warmer climates, farmers tend not to have a separate building to protect their cows. Blackwelder noted to the Springfield News-Ledger he has insurance, but the loss of the animals could total up to $60,000. The loss of the cows was more than just financial. Blackwelder said, quote, it's not like they are pets, but the ones I'm milking, I've raised every one of them. Thankfully for Blackwelder, he still has roughly 120 cows grazing on his farm. For United News International, I'm Rachel Latham.
Authorities in Nepal made a macabre discovery at a security checkpoint May 1st. Officers found 15 human skull parts after they stopped an Indian man in Japa district, about 450 kilometers east of Kathmandu. The Kathmandu Post reports a suspect told police that an unknown man had paid him to smuggle the bones across the India-Nepal border. Superintendent of Police Shailesh Thapa said the skull parts may have been used for tantric rituals. The 66-year-old Indian man was arrested and will be booked under Nepal's Public Offense Act, since the country doesn't specifically outlaw the possession of human remains. The area in southeast Nepal has seen an uptick in human bone smuggling recently. The same is true for India's West Bengal, where the suspect is from. Police there busted a human bone smuggling ring in March after hundreds of bones were discovered in a single village. For United News International, I'm Neela Uni.
On Thursday, Georgia Governor Nathan Deal signed legislation allowing people with permits to carry concealed handguns on Georgia's public college campuses. This comes despite university leaders' objections and Deal's own veto of a campus carry measure last year. The governor signed this year's legislation without a public ceremony. He explained in a written message that he was swayed by the addition of campus locations where concealed handguns won't be allowed. These include on-campus preschools, faculty or administration offices, disciplinary hearings, and areas attended by high school students who take college classes.
El Salvador is considered tracking criminal deportees from the United States. According to Reuters, it's part of a bid to keep violent street gangs known as Maras from expanding. Salvadorian Vice President Oscar Ortiz said the government wants to create a database of criminal deportees overseen by police. The purpose of the database is to make sure they do not join gangs after returning. As U.S. President Donald Trump has cracked down on illegal immigrants, there has been a spike in deportations from the United States. Fears are rising in El Salvador that the ranks of Maras and other gangs may swell. According to the United Nations, El Salvador has one of the highest homicide rates in the world, with nearly 82 out of every 100,000 people murdered.
On Thursday, Donald Tusk, the chairman of the EU, said that the UK's negotiations with the European Union on exiting the organization are already very tough and will become impossible if emotions become unchecked. In a statement, Tusk said, "The stakes are too high to let our emotions get out of hand, because at stake are the daily lives and interests of millions of people on both sides of the channel." The warning follows comments by UK Prime Minister Theresa May this week that European politicians and officials may try to affect the outcome of Britain's election on June 8th.
The call of the wild is getting harder to hear. According to a new study, those peaceful natural sounds, bird songs, rushing rivers, and rustling grass are being drowned out by noise from people in many of America's protected parks and wilderness areas. Scientists measured sound levels at 492 places, from city parks to remote federal wilderness. They calculated that in nearly 2/3 of the lower 48's parks, the noise can, at times, be twice the natural background level because of airplanes, cars, logging, mining, and oil and gas drilling. That increase can harm wildlife, making it harder for them to find food or mates, and make it harder for people to hear those natural sounds. People hear only half the sounds that they would in natural silence.
Newfound documents recently surfaced from Facebook's team in Australia have allegedly revealed the social media giant's ability to assist advertisers in targeting teenagers who view themselves as worthless. The documents showed that Facebook has the ability to spot when teens are in need of a confidence boost. Using Facebook's tools and image recognition, advertisers are able to find teens in some of their lowest moments and subsequently target ads at them. This isn't the first time the social network's algorithmic advertising has caused trouble. In November, Facebook removed an ad tool that excluded people based on ethnic affinity.
This week, family members of victims in the 2015 San Bernardino terror attack sued Facebook, Google, and Twitter. In their filing, the families accused the companies of providing platforms that help the terrorist group ISIS spread propaganda, raise money, and recruit followers. Therefore, the lawsuit alleges that the companies are liable for the wrongful deaths of 3 of the 14 victims killed in the December 2, 2015 attack. A statement from the lawsuit reads, "Without defendants Twitter, Facebook, and Google, the explosive growth of ISIS over the last few years into the most feared terrorist group in the world would not have been possible."
An activist could spend up to a year behind bars after laughing at the confirmation hearing of U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Desiree Ferruz was convicted May 3rd in Washington, D.C. on criminal misdemeanor charges. The woman laughed during the January hearing when Alabama Senator Richard Shelby said Sessions had a, quote, record of treating all Americans equally under the law. Ferruz was removed from the hearing.
Why am I being taken out of here? This man is evil. You're evil.
A jury found Ferruz guilty of disrupting Congress and parading or demonstrating. She could face up to 6 months in jail for each charge. A jury member told the Huffington Post that Ferruz wasn't convicted for laughing, but for how she acted while being removed. Fayrouz is a member of a political activist group called Code Pink. The Code Pink campaign director told NBC News Fayrouz's laugh, quote, was not demonstrating. Fayrouz will return to court in June. For United News International, I'm Gabrielle Caldwell.
Tens of thousands of Venezuelan government foes, led by opposition deputies, filled this Caracas highway for as far as the eye could see, to tell the government they are not backing down.
How far we get today depends on those who have the weapons. But I can tell you our struggle will go as far as it takes to achieve freedom.
We are seeing that violence brings more violence, that the people are increasingly hurt but also more angry.
That anger is being further fueled by the president's decision to call a constituent assembly to rewrite the Constitution.
The demonstrators weren't told where they were heading, but we've just been informed that this march is heading towards the National Assembly, and that's precisely where President Nicolás Maduro is gathering at this hour with his supporters.
The president personally delivered a decree to the Electoral Council to invoke a constituent assembly, taunting opponents who argue he is consolidating a dictatorship.
You wanted to vote, we're going to vote. You wanted dialogue, here we have a constituent assembly.
Back at the march, young masked protesters prepared to do battle in what everyone knew was coming.
I got tired of marching and being repressed like a dog, so now I march ready to defend myself.
But they were no match for riot police. They hurled tear gas and water cannon with military precision. While some tried to fight back with stones and Molotov cocktails, the vast majority were forced to turn back, determined, it seems, to return to fight another day. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, Caracas.
Reuters has reported that on Thursday, French presidential candidate Emmanuel Macron accused his far-right rival Marine Le Pen of spreading lies by suggesting he had an undisclosed offshore fund. Macron's party said it was taking legal action after an internet campaign suggested shortly before a televised debate between the two candidates on Wednesday night that Macron had concealed funds in a foreign tax haven. Macron himself denied the allegation. Campaigning on an anti-EU, anti-globalization platform, Le Pen has sought to portray Macron as an out-of-touch member of an elite group responsible for the unemployment of around 10%, low growth, and a 2-year spate of Islamist violence.
A group of people from the Yazidi religion have been rescued from ISIS in Iraq. On May 1st, the United Nations said 36 Yazidis were rescued after nearly 3 years of slavery under ISIS. Radio Free Europe estimates as many as 3,500 Yazidis remain in captivity. The Yazidi religion has elements of many faiths, including Christianity and Islam, with an estimated 500,000 members worldwide. However, the BBC says some groups, including ISIS, view the Yazidis as devil worshippers. A humanitarian coordinator for the UN said the survivors include men, women and children. The survivors are being housed at UN centres in the Iraqi Kurdistan town of Dohoik, where they are being offered care including medical and psychological aid. For United News International, I'm Rachel Latham.
A federal inmate in Atlanta and his fiancée ran an inmate taxi service, taking inmates around town to restaurants and hotels and returning them to prison in exchange for money. Prosecutors say 41-year-old Deldrick Jackson and 38-year-old Kelly Bass face charges related to helping the inmates escape. Authorities say the inmates were taken to places and often returned to prison with contraband. Other guards didn't know they had left. Prosecutors say Bass received about $4,000 from inmates' families or accounts associated with inmates at the U.S. Penitentiary in Atlanta.
Sunscreen is meant to protect our skin. But what if it's actually causing other problems? A new study suggests millions of people who use sunscreen around the world aren't getting enough vitamin D. Vitamin D plays a big role in keeping our bones, muscles, and immune systems healthy. It's even been shown to protect against dementia and depression. Vitamin D is also known as the sunshine vitamin because our bodies produce it when skin is exposed to sunlight. Results of a clinical study published in the Journal of the American Osteopathic Association suggest nearly 1 billion people aren't getting enough vitamin D due to chronic disease or because they're overprotecting their skin with sunscreen. Researchers suggest spending 5 to 30 minutes outside in midday sun twice a week without skin protection. One study member said just walking with exposed arms and legs is enough to get that sunshine vitamin. For United News International, I'm Cambry Caldwell.
Reuters has reported that U.S. President Donald Trump returns to New York on Thursday for the first time since taking office. City officials brace for protests in the city where he built his name and fortune. Trump's departure for his January 20th inauguration ended a 2.5-month period following his November 8th election that was marked by mostly protesting but also admiring crowds outside his home in the Fifth Avenue Tower. Police are bracing for protests around the decommissioned aircraft carrier Intrepid on Manhattan's west side, where Trump is set to meet with Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, and at Trump Tower in the busy Midtown section. Trump's first 100 days in office brought rollbacks of environmental regulations, an attempt to repeal his predecessor's signature healthcare law, and crackdowns on immigration, none of which play well in the liberal Northeast city.
On Thursday, former U.S. President Barack Obama released a video expressing his support for French presidential candidate Emmanuel Macron. In his video, Obama said, "I want all my friends in France to know how much I am rooting for your success. Because of how important this election is, I also want you to know that I am supporting Emmanuel Macron to lead you forward." Macron, a former investment banker and economy minister, is up against far-right nationalist Marine Le Pen, who has been running a French-first anti-globalization campaign.
The owner of Pulse, the gay nightclub in Orlando that was the site of the worst mass shooting in modern U.S. history, says the site of the shooting will become a memorial and museum to comfort the bereaved and educate future generations about the importance of tolerance. At a news conference outside the Orlando nightclub before dozens of officials, first responders, and a handful of victims' relatives, owner Barbara Poma said, "What began as a place for fun and joy is now sacred ground. What was once our little corner is now shared with the world."
Large attendance and big themes at this year's World Economic Forum on Africa in Durban. Another gathering of world business leaders who say they're here to help Africa sort out its problems through inclusive access to technology. To achieve that goal, the forum insists on what it calls a responsive and responsible leadership. President Jacob Zuma is here with 18 of his cabinet ministers. He's been facing widespread popular discontent over allegations of corruption and questions over his ties to the wealthy elite. But he tells Al Jazeera he's here to represent the poor.
Mr. President, this conference to us is a mixture of heads of state and big businesses. Who represents the poor population here? And why are they unhappy with this conference?
Well, I haven't heard that there are people who are unhappy. Maybe I've been reading different kind of news.
There are demonstrations.
Well, demonstrations are always there.
So who represents them? Give me the name of someone, just one person.
Who?
The name of someone here.
Who elected me? Yeah. Just 1 minute. I must help him. Yeah. Who elected this president? Are not the masses. And then who represents the masses? It's not me.
I'm talking about Africans.
Outside, protesters have been on the streets accusing African governments, including Zuma, of plotting with big international business elites to loot Africa's resources.
We are challenging the World Economic Forum that it has failed us after many years of being in operation. It has failed the people of Africa.
The poverty rate in South Africa is near 60% according to official figures. Many here say they haven't seen the promises of the post-apartheid era fulfilled. With large corporations deeply entrenched and vestiges of colonial imperialism still visible everywhere, some people say they can't trust their leaders' deals with Western partners at the forum.
They talk left, but they walk right. And you can tell that by virtue of the kinds of men that are here in Durban. King Mswati of Swaziland, Yoweri Museveni, Edgar Lundu from Zambia. These are people who are absolute oppressors in their countries.
Over the years, opposition to the World Economic Forum in poor countries has grown louder, while the organization's global reach has only got bigger. Mohammed Val, Al Jazeera, Durban.